Today we actually traded this KH. It's a 75C, so it's the premium 75 horsepower tractor. It's very low hours. It's like under 100 hours. It's a 2021 model, so we think it's a pretty fair comparison. And we're going to compare it to our 4707, which is what we have in that category. One of the things you notice as you're walking around and comparing these tractors is the differences between the rear ends. So when you look at the case versus when you look at the Massey, there's just a lot more iron in this Massey. But I expect you to take my word for it, so I brought my tape measure. I want to measure some of the key components to see how do we stack up. I think it's going to surprise you potentially. So there's a few things that we look at. One of the first things I look at is the lift arms, right? So the 3-point lift arms. You know, how thick and how heavy duty is our lift arm? And when I do my measurements, I find that Case's lift arms are 3.5 inches by 3/4 inches. So 3/4 by 3.5 inches. Not bad. When you come over to the Massey though, you'll quickly find it's 4 inches tall by 1 inch wide. That's significantly more metal just in the lift arms. I think it's worth noting. One of the other things I notice is how, and I don't want to use, how light the drawbar support looks, or at least it appears to be. So when I go to measuring it, I think the most important part for me in this is how thick and how heavy duty is the plate that actually supports our drawbar. And so I'm measuring it, and it looks to be about 5/8 inch. It might be 1/2 inch and just painted, but it looks to be 5/8 inch, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. This is 1.25 inches. That's double the thickness between the two plates. And not just that, but if you look at the amount of iron that supports the sides, you know, we've got, looks like about 3/4 inch plate there. And that's under 1/2 inch. I'm guessing 3/8. There's a tremendous difference in the amount of metal that goes into the brackets, or the metal, the steel that's supporting our drawbar. And the drawbar itself, I think, is kind of important. They look pretty similar, so I expect them to be pretty close. This one is, I want to say it's about 1.1 inches tall by 2 and I don't know, 3/8, something like that. This one is 1.5 inches tall by a solid 3.5. So our drawbar is a lot heavier on the Massey. One other thing that and it's going to be a little hard to measure, but I kind of want to do it, is the rear end of this tractor. So when we start talking about the rear ends of these tractors, I guess the reason why I think this is important is, so like these are what's called a trumpet housing. And with our trumpet housing, that's where all your final drive gears are. So the larger the on a base level, the larger the rear end, the more metal you get. But on a larger scale, I think it also kind of tells you how large the gears are inside. Not necessarily, but that's what I'm going to go with on this. So I think it's important how thick and how heavy are the axles, and how thick and how heavy is the trumpet housing. So let's start with the case, and let's start with the axle, because it's the easiest for me to measure. Their axle housing is 5 inches thick. Let's look at the Massey over here. The Massey looks to be 6.5 inches thick, if I'm getting it. It's maybe, let's go 6. I don't want to be overzealous. I think it's 5 inches on the case versus 6 inches on the Massey. That's a lot more iron. The next thing I'm going to try to measure, I'm going to do my very best, is the trumpet housing. And it's kind of hard to get to because of the way the linkage is, but I think that's about right. And I think it's 12 inches from the bottom of the trumpet housing to the top of the trumpet housing. And the Massey's a little bit easier just because of the way things are structured. But it's 15 inches, so 3 inches taller in that trumpet housing, which, I mean, means one of two things. It's either got a lot more iron in it, or it's got a larger or it's got a larger planetary set in it. I think it's got a much heavier drivetrain, I guess is the be-all, end-all that I'm trying to get at here. I think the drivetrain that you get on this tractor is significantly heavier than what you get on this tractor. A couple other things, maybe not to measure, but just to point out while we're back here, is the 3-point. So we've already proven that our 3-point arms, and if you look at the adjustment rods, I'm not even going to measure them. I think you can see this is much, much, much beefier than what this is over here. So I think you can see that without doing a lot of measurements, so I think that's fine. But a couple other things, a little different style of 3-point. So, and you'll see this on more or less every tractor from this size on up, whether it's Case, Deere, whatever. You're going to start to see these external cylinders. It's something that's been done in the big tractor world for a long time, and it's kind of trickling down to the small tractor world. But we have two very large rams that balance the load of that 3-point, which means we've got a much, much heavier lift capacity versus the Case, which is still the old school style of sticking that ram. It's all into the top housing of that rear end. Not that that's a bad way to do it. It's been done like that for a long time. The one thing I like about this is we don't have a lot of internal components that if you did have a problem, you're not tearing apart the whole transmission to necessarily work on it. So if you had a leak in a ram or whatnot, it's super easy to take off and get fixed. So that's a few of the things you notice when you're looking at the rear end. Tractor. So guys, I'm Nick Pomeroy with PR Equipment here in Kearns, Texas. We want you to come out and check these out for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Come out, put your eyes on them, drive them, and just see if maybe the Massey Ferguson lineup is right for you. As we always say, you get more with Massey, so come check them out. Give us a call, 903-270-0877. You can like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and be looking out for the other videos that we've done on this kind of competitive series that we're doing here. Thanks, y'all.